What's up, guys? Here is your 5-year plan on how to get to the UFC or to 1FC or to PFL or any big mixed martial arts organization you would like to get to. First off, the coaching has to be world class. So you're going to start training. And so when I first started, it took me about 5 years to get to the UFC from day one. And it was really less training time because I had 2 surgeries before that point. I had hand surgery and shoulder surgery. So it was really about 3.5 years of training. And I kind of got lucky, but things have changed, right? I got lucky with the Ultimate Fighter, and things have really evolved since 2009, since 2007 when I started first training, and then 2012 when I got into the Ultimate Fighter. So my advice for the 2024 athlete that is going to try to be in the UFC and wants to pursue this, and they're starting later, let's say they're anywhere from, when I say later, let's say they're 18. They're 18. If you had a wrestling background, you're already ahead of the pack. So I would say if you're 18 years old, 19, 20 years old, and you've never trained a day in your life, and you want to start training and be in the UFC in 5 years, you need to find a good gym that has a wrestling base. You need to focus mostly on wrestling and boxing the first 2 years of your career. Lots of wrestling, lots of boxing. And I'm not discounting jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai or kickboxing, but I just think that wrestling is king in MMA and boxing is king on the feet in MMA. Boxing, because of little gloves, you can be the best kickboxer in the world and get hit with a 4-ounce glove and things change, right? So boxing is king. And then wrestling is king because the wrestler decides where the fight goes. So I would say you need to find an MMA gym that has a wrestling base grappling program, not just a jiu-jitsu program. I made a video, I'll actually link that video to this one. I made a video about why most schools in America can't produce high-level fighters is because, well, one is the technique, but also because they teach more Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu than they do boxing and wrestling. Boxing and wrestling are king. 90% of knockouts in MMA come by hands. I mean, every now and then you see head kicks that are great. You see flying knees. You see some cool elbows, some cool stuff. And you definitely should train that some, but it shouldn't be your main focus. Your main focus should be landing punches and defending punches because 90% of knockouts come by that. And then once again, wrestling and cage work, kind of decide the grappling in MMA at this point. The only people really at the UFC level submitting people off their back are the Brazilians that have been training their whole life, or a kid that's been doing jiu-jitsu his entire life. So I would say let's say so here's the plan. You're going to practice 5 to 6 days a week. I'm assuming you have a full-time job, but you need to be training 2.5 to 3 hours, 5 days a week. Minimum 2 hours every day, preferably 3 hours, 5 days a week. You need to do grappling and striking both every day. Some days you drill, some days you go live. But you need to do a lot of wrestling. You need to do a lot of boxing. You need to do a lot of boxing sparring. And so 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and then the 6th day do 2 hours at least on a Saturday, preferably 3 as well. A lot of drilling, guys. Remember, you can't go hard all the time, but you can drill all the time. You can do slow jiu-jitsu drills, slow wrestling drills. Even slow defensive drills for striking. There's ways to train slow and not damage your body and still get the technical work you need. So you're going to do that. You're going to take your first year. And of course, this is dependent on you being able to handle this. This is for the person that really believes in their heart that they have a chance to be in the UFC in 5 years and not even questions it. Like when I was coming up, I didn't even question it. I really was so delusional. I believed it and it worked out, right? But you need to make sure you're winning in the gym. You need to make sure that you're good in sparring because you shouldn't be fighting within the first year of training unless you're winning in the gym pretty big. You need to if you're getting beat up by your sparring partners, unless they have a lot of experience, but let's say someone on the similar training time frame you're on, if you're getting beat up by those guys, you need to wait anyway, and you're probably not getting into the UFC in 5 years anyway. And I know that sounds harsh, but I'm just being realistic with you. I'm just giving you a kind of a realistic guide that I followed when I made it to the UFC in less than this time period. And I would say you need to, within the first year, you need to fight at least 3 kickboxing or boxing and kickboxing smokers. 3 smokers the first year. The second year, you need to fight probably 10 smokers. You need to fight every month. And you can find these fights. A smoker is a damn sparring session. You show up at the gym, a lot of gyms, and you spar with people that you've never met, and there's an audience. It simulates a fight, but it's still big gloves, shin guards, sometimes headgear. So the first year you fight 3 smokers. The second year you fight 10 smokers. The third year you fight 3 amateur MMA fights. The fourth year you turn pro, and the fifth year, the fourth and fifth year you have pro fights, and you're going to need probably at least 6 fights, 6 wins, depending on your weight class too. Weight classes matter. If you're a heavyweight, you don't have to have as many fights, but you're going to need a few fights. You're going to need several fights and several wins to be able to have a record good enough to get in the UFC. So first year, 3 smokers, lots of grappling tournaments, as many grappling tournaments you can go to. Focus a lot on boxing, a lot on wrestling. Second year, focus on a lot of boxing, a lot of wrestling still. 10 smokers. Add some good kickboxing for sure. Do some kickboxing smokers as well. The third year, you're turning into a sanctioned fighter. You're fighting without shin guards. Maybe fight 3 amateur MMA fights is good. Honestly, you don't need a ton of amateur MMA fights. You're risking the same damage for no money. You're still fighting with no shin guards and small gloves, so you can get hurt with no money. So you don't need a ton, but you need about 3, especially if you have the other 10 or 15 smokers. And this is assuming you're drilling and your technique is coming along very well, and you're a tough guy, and you have girl, and you have good cardio, and you work out hard. Take 3 MMA fights, maybe a kickboxing smoker as well without shin guards. That'll be, a kickboxing sanctioned fight as well without shin guards. Then you turn pro the 4th year, and you try to fight as many times as you can. You try to fight 4 or 5 times that year. And then the second year, you'll be a little more, if let's say you get 4 fights in the first year, if you can get 5, that would be very nice. If you can get 5 fights the first year you turn pro, and then 3 or 4 again the 5th year, and you're going to have a good chance. If you're let's say you took your 6-0, you may get a fight for a feeder organization that goes to the UFC, like LFA, or some of the other feeder organizations out there that the UFC will watch these cards and sign their champions. Or you may get a contender series call. I mean, this is not an easy step, but this is a guide I would say that could work, and has worked in the past. But once you turn pro, you have to be ready, and you have to fight as much as possible. So in that 5-year time period, you're not going to have a life. You're not going to be partying much. You're not going to be going out, drinking, hanging out. You're going to miss a bunch of birthday parties. You're going to miss some stuff if you're fully dedicated, but there is a chance, guys. So once again, the technique has to be great. The technique, if you're at a gym that has shit technique, then you could have 10 years and you're probably not getting to the UFC, even if you're tough. And even if you are tough, the tough guys who make it to the UFC, here's a good example. The tough guys who make it to the UFC that have shitty coaching are normally guys that go 2-2 and get cut. Like they're definitely tough enough. They may be athletic enough. They may be strong enough, fast enough to be in the UFC, but their technique doesn't keep them there. I learned that when I was coming up. When I got to the Ultimate Fighter, I was so far technically behind these guys, and part of it was because I'd only been training for about 3.5 years of actual training time. But also part of that was because the teams I was with wasn't giving me the proper technique that I needed. So I went and found others, and some of the coaches from the Ultimate Fighter and stuff. But if you don't have technique, there's no chance at all. If the technique isn't good, there's no chance at all. Or if you think you're going to win a bunch of high-level fights off your back, pulling guard, or not learning how to box, wanting to do Muay Thai and only think you're going to stop everyone with a bunch of leg kicks and not get punched in your face. So there's obviously there's a lot of reasons why this couldn't work, but how it could work is follow a simple plan. Once again, the plan is the first year you focus on boxing, kickboxing. You fight three boxing smokers, or amateur boxing tournaments like Golden Gloves or something. The second year, you take probably 8 to 10 smokers. 8 to 10 smokers, boxing and kickboxing. And during the first 2 years, you also do as many grappling tournaments as you can. Then the third year, you turn into a sanctioned fighter. You fight 3 sanctioned fights, maybe 4 amateur MMA, and then maybe a kickboxing one. So you get used to fighting, more standing up kickboxing without shin guards. Then the fourth year, you turn pro. You have 4 or 5 fights, as many as you can get, as long as you're not taking damage. And, obviously if you get injured, this could slow this whole process down. Then the 5th year, you're looking for big feeder organizations or contender series, something that's going to give you a chance to be seen by the matchmakers from the UFC or ONE FC or PFL that'll give you a chance, and hopefully then something good could happen for you, and you have over 5 professional fights, and hopefully you get seen and have a chance to get signed. So that's way easier said than me explaining it, for sure, but I feel like that's a decent guide, guys. So let me know what you think. Leave any questions you have below, any videos you'd like me to talk about, and I'll try to get back to you and shoot a video on it. If you're new to martial arts and you're looking for a good guide to finding a gym, get my book, The Ultimate Guide to Choosing Your Martial Arts School and Instructor. The link is in the description below. It's only $4.99 on Amazon. Small book, 65 pages or so. Just a good guide on how to find a gym near you. Thank you, guys.